Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the Eternal set review for the new set Dark Frontier. We are talking about the second part of the fire cards today, but before we dive in, you know the drill. If you're new to the channel and haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the notification icon to be notified once new content comes out, to not miss anything. The other thing, please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube to help support our free content. That would really mean a lot. And now on to the cards. Alright, so first we have Impatient Pyro Mage. Impatient Pyro Mage is pretty awesome. First of all, it's a 2-power 2/2, which is not that great, but in a deck that is proactive enough and can trigger the onslaught, the card is amazing. It's kind of not really a turn 2 play most of the time anyway, so that's not that big of a deal. You draw a card and reduce its cost by 1 this turn, and at the end of your turn you discard it. So in a way it's similar to Quarry, but only works that turn, but also comes with a 2/2 body attached, which is pretty nice. There are similar cards in Magic that are less conditional, but also don't reduce the cost of the card you're getting, for example. So yeah, this card is pretty sweet. It's like a much better Temple Scribe that you have to jump through some hoops to get going, but then you get a whole lot more out of it. So yeah, this card is pretty sweet and gonna be relevant to various more proactive, more aggressive fire decks in the future, I think. And in Limited, of course, the card is also amazing, especially because a 2-cost 2/2 alone is already a lot better in Limited. Next we have Incendiary Slag. This is recycling of an old artwork from a card that used to be in set 1 but got removed before open beta. I don't remember the name. It was a Stonescars 3-drop at 8 units. Anyway, now it's a 3/1 for double fire, and if you trigger Onslaught when you played this, secretly choose a card in the enemy player's market. The next time they draw a card from their market, transform the chosen card into a fire bomb. So that's kind of cool. So basically you have this whole mini game going on there. Either you want to take the card that matters the most to you. If there's a card that clearly answers what you're doing or is a very big problem for you, you just take that. Otherwise you can basically look what is the most obvious choice for them and then take the second most obvious choice, because they will assume that you just targeted the most obvious choice. And then yeah, they have to choose whether, like, on what level they want to put you. Do they think you just went straight for the best card? Did you go for the second best card? And then there's also possibly the mode of just going for like another card that does something, but you almost definitely didn't choose, because any card taken out of the market transforms the firebomb. So if you take, like, I don't know, a power out of the market, when you're pretty sure the opponent didn't chose the power, then the card that they chose will be revealed by transforming into a firebomb. That's kind of an interesting twist. So yeah, there are a lot of cool kind of like mind games going on there. Problem basically is 3/1, especially without any abilities like battle skills, is problematic. Like, I don't really want to play 1 toughness 2-drops these days, unless they are like Oyan, which basically just does broken stuff if it doesn't die, and you can also just play it on turn 3, get value out of it, and then they kill it with a favor or a snowball or whatever, and it doesn't matter that much anymore. But other than that, 3/1 is a pretty bad stat line. Double fire is very restrictive and problematic. Playing it on 2 also means you need a 1-drop, and 1-drops are not very great right now either. So all that said, the card is in a really rough place right now, but I think the design direction of the card is pretty cool, and it's a nice design space to explore these kind of counter market cards. But I don't see this card seeing any play anytime soon, and in Limited it's just a 2-cost 3/1 that's hard to play, so not great, especially for rare. Next we have Ruins Guide. It's another 2-cost 2/2, but when one of your units emerges, Ruin's Guide gets +X this turn, equal to that unit's attack and health. The problem is it's only this turn. The unit is a 2/2 with no abilities. Sorry, for most of the time, and even then it's only like temporary. So yeah, the card's pretty weak, pretty bad. I initially thought it was permanent, then the card would have been kind of interesting and cool to build around. Still not super good, but interesting and worthwhile exploring. Which is ironic given that it's an explorer. But yeah, the way it is now, the card is just irrelevant. In limited, it's an above average 2-drop maybe. Next we have Slag. This card is secretly awesome because it provides a really great market card. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a market card only, but as a market card it's really cool. Most of the attachments these days that you need to kill are relics. Either big relic weapons, cursed relics, or just regular relics. Mostly regular relics and cursed relics. Relic weapons not so much. So the card does that. Sure, it's not a cheap hit, it costs 2, something like Boar costs 1, but it also kills an enemy sentinel, which is a pretty big deal for fire decks, especially fire decks that don't have access to Shadow or Justice, for example, or Vanquish, Desecrate, and all that stuff. And then being able to have a 2-cost market card that kills Sandstorm Titan, which is often a big problem for something like Skycrag decks, for example, especially Skycrag aggressive decks, or even sometimes for something like Praxis decks. And also the other Sentinel in the usually go-to Sandstorm Titan deck these days is Heart of the Vault, because Praxis is the primary Sandstorm Titan deck and color combination these days, and Slag has 2 good targets in this deck alone, and then there might be versions that have additional Sentinels and stuff. So yeah, the card is actually a pretty cool, multi-purpose market card that should not be overlooked. And in limited, not sure how main deckable it is, probably not that much. Because unless you play against specific colors, the card is just gonna be completely useless. If you're not playing against time, you can only hit relics, and then even relics won't be that popular in most colors. So maybe against Justice you have a bunch of okay relic weapons, but even killing those after they killed one of your units is not that great. So yeah, not seeing this. Next we have Stronghold Wendell, the very first art promo of the set back then. It's another 2-cost 3/1, as I mentioned, very problematic. It has an alternate mode of Shift 3 to kill an enemy attachment, and then you get the 3/1 like 3 turns later. Not great, I don't see this being constructed playable. In limited, however, this is pretty sweet. Sorry, I have no idea why I'm yawning so much. Because it's not like I'm feeling tired, it's just... I don't know. Anyway, Stronghold Wendell in limited seems like a pretty cool card and a pretty solid addition to a fire deck, especially a more aggressive one. Then we have Zuberi's Longbow, one of the more bad of the like worse scout payoff cards. It's a 2-cost +2/+1 weapon that when you scout, you have to sacrifice it to deal 3 damage to an enemy. Which is pretty awkward. You can't even like choose whether or not to sack it. So in a scout heavy deck you just can't even really control when to sack it. Either you don't scout, which is pretty bad a lot of the time, or you scout and this goes off no matter you want it to, no matter whether you want it to or not. Because if you don't have a good target, you're just dealing 3 to the face instead of attacking for 2 extra to the face, which is pretty bad. And it doesn't add any battle skills or anything. So yeah, the card's pretty bad in constructed. In limited, it's probably worthwhile and more of an upside because you're kind of actively trying to find a way to trigger it to use it as removal, basically. So it seems quite nice in limited. Next we have Call to Arms. For Warp, you play a +1 attack weapon on 2 of your units, which is not that great, but it's decent. First of all, it's permanent. Second of all, it's fast, so that helps. And third of all, it has warp, which can make it free. So while it is definitely not a constructed card, I think in limited this actually looks pretty nice, and there are also some weapon synergies and stuff. So yeah, quite a solid card for more aggressive decks. Then we have Sensari Dervish. It's a 3-cost 3/2 charge. In constructed, this card is a bit too weak, falling short, but in limited, this looks pretty solid, and the ability is pretty nice for an aggressive deck. Twist 2 to exhaust an enemy unit is an additional nice bonus, plus potential gunslinger synergies. Then we have Cover Fire Marksmen. It's a 3-cost 2/2 double damage, which is not super exciting, but it is solid. There are combat tricks, there are weapons, which makes this pretty nice in limited. Constructed, of course, it's not particularly relevant. And then for Shift 5, you can give one of your other units double damage until Cover Fire Marksman emerges. There's a whole cycle of these sort of 3-drops that have Shift 5 and temporarily give stats or abilities to another unit while being shifted. And this seems like a pretty solid one of the kind, but all the ones that I can think of right now are pretty solid. But we'll talk about them when we get to them. Next we have Goldmine. At the end of your turn, if the enemy player took 3 or more damage, you create and draw a treasure trove. So this is kind of interesting. In constructed, I think it's a bit too slow and situational to do that much. There could be like something interesting in the sense that if you have a very spell and like kind of burn heavy deck, you could use this to refuel yourself, but the treasure troves are pretty slow. If you're going for like a longer game plan with I don't know, yeah, sort of trying to grind and get extra cards with this, you will have to address the opposing board a lot more. You can't really ignore the opponent trying to kill you when you're not killing them fast enough. So that also causes problems here. So yeah, don't really see this in constructed. But in limited, this seems like a potentially quite strong card that can run away with the game and make or break a game. Next we have Nimble Conscript. This card's actually pretty cool. First of all, in limited, I would say this is quite the powerhouse. A Shift 1 3/4 Reckless that alternatively is a 3/4 Reckless for 3 is quite solid, especially in fire aggressive decks where you have tricks and weapons and stuff to make sure the Reckless is not that big of a problem. And here we have a Reckless unit with very robust health, so that also makes Reckless a lot less of a problem. And I think the card is good enough to even be a constructed consideration, especially given that traditional 1-drops are quite problematic right now. Having a turn 1 play that still kind of gives you tempo, gives you board presence and momentum in the long run, making good use of your turn 1 power, seems pretty great without having the usual issues of fragility and being outclassed of traditional 1-drops, making this quite the interesting card. Especially if you shift this turn 1, you can attack turn 4 just like you could if you would have played it on turn 3, except it's also going to be an unblockable attack, which is pretty nice. So yeah, I think the card is actually interesting in constructed. I'm not sure if there's a deck that would want it right now, but it's definitely a card to keep in the back of your head as constructed playable. And last but not least for part 2, we have Quake Titan. It's a 3-cost 5/1 Sentinel and has an alternate mode. Basically, if you shift it for 7 instead of playing it for 3, you deal 5 damage to an enemy. The most noteworthy part here basically is that if you shift this with anything, it still deals the 5 damage. That's the thing that's kind of unobvious and unintuitive about shift, is that if they are shifted in any way, they always do their like shift trigger. Even if it says shift 7, any form of shifting makes it deal 5 damage. So you could play this on 4, for example, and play phase out on it. Or get it with a reweave on a 3-drop and stuff like that, making up for the card disadvantage and gaining you some nice tempo. And so on and so forth. So there might be some interesting interactions here, but I feel like this card is just not going to be good enough. The body is too weird and too bad, being a 5/1. Also dying very easily to some minor AoE damage stuff like torrential downpour out of markets, making it particularly fragile, and also after the first unblockable attack the card dies to anything. So there are a lot of problems here. But yeah, it's kind of a nice show of concept in a way. So keep that in mind. And in limited, I think this is at least fine. Probably not that great, but 7 power, deal 5, and get a shifted 5/1 is a decent deal, probably at least. Alright, this concludes the second part of the fire cards. Sorry for the short interruptions from my yawning. Not sure what's going on there. But I'll be back fresh and hopefully without yawning with part 3 tomorrow, and we'll dive further into the fire cards. Let me know in the comments what you think of the cards and my assessment of them, where you disagree. If you have any questions, always happy to hear from you guys. Otherwise, drop a like if you enjoy the videos. This really helps others see the video too. Share it with your friends, and of course subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification icon if you want to see more. And one last thing, please consider whitelisting YouTube and EternalTitans.com on your adblock. That would really help us keep making free content for you guys. That's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I see you next time. Bye.